A Citizen's Guide to Supporting Federal Candidates. This presentation is designed to encourage citizens like yourself to take an active part in the federal election process. As you'll learn, there are several ways you may support candidates running for the U.S. House, Senate, and the presidency. Some of these activities are subject to the federal campaign finance law. For example, the law limits the amount you may contribute to a candidate and prohibits certain people and organizations from making contributions at all. The law also requires public disclosure of certain campaign finance information. While there are many ways a citizen may support candidates for federal office, three of the most common are listed here: contributions, independent expenditures, and volunteer activity. The campaign finance law defines the term contribution very broadly to include anything of value given for the purpose of influencing a federal election, including donations of money, goods and services, as well as any special discounts offered outside the normal course of business. Contributions are subject to limits both on their source and amount and must be disclosed to the public.
Any contributions you make to federal candidates and committees are subject to the limits set forth in this chart. Some of these limits are adjusted for inflation each election cycle, so be sure you're looking at the current limits chart before making any contributions.
If you contribute more than $200 to a federal candidate, PAC, or party committee, your name, address, occupation, and employer will be disclosed as part of the recipient committee's report to the FEC. Those reports are made public in the FEC's Public Records Office and on our website. The law prohibits contributions from certain sources, including corporations and labor unions, government contractors, and foreign nationals. As an exception to the corporate labor ban, corporations and unions may sponsor PACs that raise money from the company's employees and stockholders or the union's members. Those PAC funds may be used to make contributions to federal candidates. The government contractor ban applies to persons holding contracts to provide goods or services to the federal government, but does not prevent personal contributions from individuals who simply work for a company that has such a contract. The foreign national ban applies to any persons who are not either U.S. citizens or green card holders, and that ban applies to all U.S. elections, federal, state, and local. Now let's talk about independent expenditures. Unlike contributions, independent expenditures are not subject to any amount limitation, and corporations and unions can use their treasury funds to make them. Independent expenditures are payments for communications that expressly advocate the election or defeat of a candidate, but are not coordinated with that candidate's campaign. Every independent expenditure must include a disclaimer that identifies who paid for it, and that person must report their activity to the FEC. As illustrated in this example, the disclaimer must not only identify who paid for the message, but also make clear that the ad was not authorized by the campaign. If you spend $250 or more on an independent expenditure, you'll need to report it on FEC Form 5. Those reports are generally filed on a quarterly schedule. However, if your independent expenditures made up to 20 days prior to the election total $10,000 or more, you'll need to file within 48 hours. Closer to the election, 24-hour notices are required for independent expenditures of $1,000 or more. Now let's discuss volunteer activities. The campaign finance law includes a number of provisions that allow individuals to provide volunteer services to federal candidates and party committees without those services being treated as a contribution. Specific examples include providing personal services, hosting an event in your home, and making limited use of workplace or labor union facilities. When an individual hosts a campaign-related gathering in their home, community room, or church, the cost of the invitations and food and beverages served at the event are not considered contributions if they remain under certain limits. If the event benefits a candidate, the limit is $1,000 per election. If the activity benefits a political party committee, the limit is $2,000 per year on behalf of all committees of the same political party. An individual may volunteer his or her personal services to a campaign without making a contribution, as long as the individual is not compensated by anyone else. For example, if an individual helps organize a voter drive or offers his or her particular skills to a campaign, neither of those activities will result in a contribution as long as the individual is not compensated. If the individual is compensated for his or her services, the activity is no longer considered volunteer activity, and the payments, if made by someone other than the campaign itself, result in an in-kind contribution from that person, subject to the limits, prohibitions, and reporting requirements of the Act. In general, if an individual provides services to a campaign during paid working hours, the employer is making a contribution. However, if you're an employee or stockholder of a corporation, or an employee or member of a labor organization, you may make limited use of your organization's facilities for volunteer activity without making a contribution. For example, an employee could use an office phone to make calls pertaining to political volunteer work, but the activity must not interfere with the employee's work or the organization's normal activity. To avoid a prohibited corporate contribution, the activity should involve incidental use of corporate facilities. FEC rules include a safe harbor of 1 hour per week or 4 hours per month. If the activity exceeds incidental use or increases the organization's overhead expenses, the individual must reimburse the organization within a commercially reasonable time. That reimbursement is considered a contribution from the individual to the political committee and must be reported. For more information, please visit the FEC's website.